For many, the idea of one day being famous is nothing more than a pipe dream. To achieve celebrity status would require decades of hard work and dedication, just for a chance to live a life of fame and fortune. However, some are more lucky than others, being born and raised by celebrity parents, with fame essentially right at their fingertips. Amazingly, in spite of the opportunities afforded to them, many of these children grow impatient into their adult years, and choose more unconventional ways to fast-track their way to the red carpet. At the turn of the century, a new trend emerged, in which children of extremely prominent celebrities turned to filming adult content in the hopes of jump-starting their careers. Some were extremely successful, while others fell into obscurity shortly after their debut. Today, we'll take a look at 6 of these stories and see for ourselves just how well they panned out. And what better place to start than the very beginning? In 1919, Conrad Hilton founded Hilton Hotels after he purchased his first property. Throughout the next few decades, he expanded nationwide, and by the 1950s, the brand had gone international, with new locations popping up in Mexico, Spain, Turkey, and beyond. In only a few decades, Hilton created generational wealth for his family, but more importantly, had inspired his children and grandchildren to become entrepreneurs themselves. His son Barron went on to carry the torch for the Hilton Hotels business after his father's retirement, and his grandson Richard made a name for himself in real estate. It's safe to say that expectations were high for the next generation of Hilton children, and Robert's first child, Paris, was no exception. In her childhood, Paris dreamed of being a veterinarian, but as she entered her teenage years, found a new passion: partying. Paris began frequently cutting class and sneaking out in the middle of the night to have fun with friends. This became such a big issue that she was sent to boarding school in the hopes of straightening her out, albeit to no avail. The trust fund child continued making the rounds and began attracting attention from the tabloids, thanks to her numerous appearances at high-profile parties and clubs in New York City, despite only being 16, might I add. In fact, she became so prominent that event organizers were willing to pay her hundreds of thousands of dollars just for appearances. With her growing notoriety, she began taking modeling gigs and got a few small roles in movies, most notable being Zoolander. By the mid-2000s, Paris had become a cultural icon, and her public persona as an out-of-control party girl juxtaposed with her upbringing in a wealthy, clean-cut conservative family only made her more fascinating. This is why she was the perfect person to feature in Fox's brand new reality TV show, The Simple Life. Featuring Paris and her best friend Nicole Richie, the two sacrificed their lavish lives of luxury for a more humble lifestyle in Arkansas. The show featured the two girls who had spent most of their lives without lifting a finger, now tasked with working various jobs and engaging in physical labor. The show was anticipated to be a massive success. However, an unforeseen turn of events would play out shortly before its release. Little did Paris know that she was about to be at the center of one of the biggest scandals in the history of Hollywood. Mere weeks before The Simple Life was set to debut, a sex tape with Paris Hilton was leaked to the internet. Filmed in 2001, One Night in Paris featured the then 19-year-old having relations with her then boyfriend Rick Salomon. Supposedly, a friend of Rick named Don Thrasher had gotten a hold of the tape and sold it off to a company called Marvad Corp, under the false pretense that he had the rights to the film. Upon seeing this news, in a public statement to the Associated Press, Hilton said, "I feel embarrassed and humiliated. I was in an intimate relationship and never ever thought these things would become public." She also claimed that she was out of it during filming of the encounter. In response, her now ex-boyfriend Rick filed a $10 million defamation lawsuit against Paris for the implication that he had taken advantage of her. As if things weren't bad enough, Rick started to sell the legitimate rights to the tape himself. In response, Hilton sued her ex-boyfriend as well as the media company for releasing the tape without her consent. She eventually won her case and received $400,000 in damages, all of which she donated to charity. Aside from the obvious emotional and mental stress that this entire situation caused, the ordeal did provide some benefits for Hilton. The Simple Life premiered with 13 million viewers for its first episode, likely thanks in large part to the buzz around the recent scandal. The show continued to see significant viewership for some time, and ran for 5 whole seasons before its cancellation in 2007. The release of her sex tape and subsequent success of her reality TV shows skyrocketed Paris into A-list stardom, and she began expanding her brand further and further. She launched her very own fragrance line in 2004, followed by a clothing line, a collection of purses, and jewelry. What's more, Paris got opportunities in modeling and acting, notably getting a role in the awful 2005 slasher film House of Wax.
Okay, this is getting kind of creepy.
That being said, her lifestyle of partying didn't slow down after her rise to fame, and as a result, her run-ins with the law became somewhat frequent. In 2006, Paris was arrested in LA for driving under the influence. She pled no contest to the charges, receiving 36 months of probation and had her license suspended. Even with that, Paris continued to drive without a license, and was pulled over again only a few months later. This directly violated her probation, and she was sentenced to 35 days in jail as a result. Paris ultimately spent only 2 days behind bars before being permitted to serve the rest of her sentence on house arrest. She also found herself in police custody on 2 separate occasions for possession of marijuana and cocaine, the latter of which almost landed her back behind bars. This time she lucked out and was simply required to perform 200 hours of community service. As you can imagine, Paris's public persona remained relatively unaltered, perceived by many to be an airheaded party girl after years of mainstream success. But this narrative would change with the release of a documentary about her life titled This Is Paris. Released in 2020, the doc showed a more human side of the pop culture icon, and focused on the darker aspects of her rise to fame. What's more, Paris revealed that much of her public persona was nothing more than an act. When people said things that hurt my feelings, in my mind, I'd say, Paris, that's you playing a character. That isn't you. Don't feel bad when people are saying things because people aren't talking about you, they're talking about what they think you are. You see, guys, you just didn't understand. It was okay that she was drinking and driving because it was merely an act. In present day, Paris is regarded as one of the most influential people from the 2000s, as she really was one of the first influencers. Her career served as a blueprint for aspiring young women hoping to make a name for themselves, using porn as a springboard to launch their careers. And the best example of this growing trend was none other than Kim Kardashian. The Kardashians are undoubtedly some of the most recognizable names in the entertainment industry. However, before Kim's brand deals and TV shows, her father was the one in headlines. Robert Kardashian is best known for serving as the defense attorney for O.J. Simpson in his infamous murder trial of 1995. You may be shocked to find out this was more than just a business relationship, as the two had been close friends ever since meeting in college, with Simpson even being the best man at Mr. Kardashian's wedding. They were so close, in fact, that Robert renewed his law license after 15 years away from the profession just to help his old pal out. The lawsuit was extremely contentious, and in spite of the court finding Simpson not guilty, many believe that he was still responsible for the murder of his ex-wife, Nicole Brown.
Well, it is finally official. Murder is legal in the state of California.
This made Robert Kardashian a controversial figure up until his death in 2003. Although no one could have suspected his then 15-year-old daughter Kimberly would go on to become the most notable person in his family, thanks to this little thing called the World Wide Web. Thanks to her father's influence and her upbringing in Los Angeles, Kim Kardashian was able to make important connections in the entertainment industry, specifically with the aforementioned Paris Hilton, who she spent time working as a stylist for. Throughout the early 2000s, Kim would become synonymous with Hilton, making frequent appearances with her at public events, and became a prominent fixture of tabloids like TMZ. As it turns out, this wasn't just a coincidence, as Kim's mother Kris had supposedly hired an entire PR team to artificially boost her influence in the public eye. Shiraz Hassan, a PR strategist, would also echo a similar claim, stating, "I photographed her day and night and kept that machine rolling so that she became relevant and she would be put on every single tabloid." For years, Kim did anything she could to boost her public status. Notably, she went on a single date with singer Lick Lachey shortly after his public breakup with Jessica Simpson. The event made headlines in the tabloids, and while the relationship never manifested, Kim certainly did everything she could to make it work. A former editor at Touch Weekly spoke about this short fling, saying, That was one of the early stunts that backfired. We tried to get her to sleep with Lick Lachey so she could be a celebrity girlfriend. She would literally bake him a basket of muffins and try to get him to come to her house, and he wouldn't go, and so they went to dinner somewhere in the North Valley, and we had paparazzi there. It was clear that Kim was desperate to grow her standing in the entertainment industry, but she continued to be known mainly for her close friendship with Paris Hilton. This would change when whisperings about an alleged sex tape began making the rounds in early 2007. When Kim discovered the tape's existence, she broke down in tears and vehemently denied being a part of it. That said, she seemed to be mistaken as the media company Vivid announced they had acquired the tape for $1 million from an anonymous third party. The tape, titled Kim Kardashian Superstar, featured a 23-year-old Kim and famous R&B singer and YouTube earbud sponsor Ray J. Kardashian attempted to prevent the tape's release by filing a lawsuit, to no avail, and went live that March. Because of its timing, many have speculated that this was done for publicity, hoping to mimic the same meteoric rise to fame that her good friend Paris Hilton had achieved after her own video leaked. Kim has repeatedly affirmed that neither she nor her family had anything to do with the tape's release. However, facts surrounding the event draw her story into question. You see, the video was supposedly filmed on Kardashian's 23rd birthday, in October of 2003. The same month that Hilton's tape was first leaked. It goes without saying, but you would imagine someone like Kim would be a bit more apprehensive about filming a sex tape, especially after directly witnessing what her close friend had been going through only a week prior. What's even more strange, it was filmed only 21 days after her father's death. Jumping forward, it has been alleged that Kim's mother Kris had been the anonymous third-party seller, considering her previous behind-the-scenes attempts to make her daughter famous. The man who purchased the tape, Stephen Hirsch, has denied that he worked with the Kardashians to release the tape. That said, people who had business experience in the adult entertainment industry still question the official story. If there's a legal issue, it's not going to be released. So in order for the tape to come out, Kim would have had to have signed off on it, period. That's just the way that works. Stephen Hirsch would never have gone against that if he didn't have signatures. For a legitimate company to release the tape, they would need something called a 2257 form, which would verify the individuals performing in the video were of age of legal consent. The idea that Vivid would upload the video at the risk of violating federal law makes Kim's story all the more difficult to believe. The situation becomes even more confusing when you consider that Kim Kardashian quickly and quietly settled the initial lawsuits, rather than following through the standard legal process to get it taken down. Kim's involvement in the release of her sex tape remains one of the great mysteries of the internet, and it's unlikely we will ever know for sure what really happened behind the scenes. What is undeniable is that the explicit video was the moment that her life changed forever, going from D-list celebrity to one of the most famous people on the planet. Not too long after, it was announced that Kim and her family would be getting their very own reality television show, and none other than Keeping Up with the Kardashians. The series ran for nearly 15 years with 20 seasons and became one of the most culturally significant programs of its time. Once a relatively obscure family, each member of the Kardashians has since staked a very lucrative celebrity brand of their own, with the most well-known member still being none other than Kim herself, with her now having a net worth of nearly $2 billion. Even with all this success, though, her sex tape has loomed over her career and personal conscience. The video became prominent once again in 2013 when her ex-boyfriend Ray J released a diss track titled I Hit It First. The single's cover featured a pixelated image of Kim herself, and made direct references to her at-the-time boyfriend, Kanye West. Ray J has also gone on to corroborate the claim that the tape was released intentionally, stating that Kim and her family dragged his name through the mud in an effort to achieve their own personal success. In fact, he also alleged that Kris Jenner had personally reviewed multiple different tapes of her daughter, and personally handpicked the best one to go public. In 2022, Kim Kardashian's 6-year-old son, Saint West, stumbled upon a still image from her infamous tape in Roblox.
Saint was on Roblox yesterday, and a thing popped up, and he started laughing, and I was like, Mommy, look, and it was a picture of my cry face.
While the child was fortunately too young to understand the context of the situation, Kim was still understandably disturbed by the event. She called her now ex-husband Kanye West in distress, fearing that their children being exposed to the video one day was nearly inevitable. In spite of their ongoing divorce, Kanye sprung into action and flew all the way from New York to Los Angeles to personally meet up with Ray J directly and secure the hard drive that the tape was stored on. Kim was relieved at this kind gesture. "I know Kanye did this for me, but he also did this for my kids. I want to shield them from as much as I can, and if I have the power to, or if Kanye has the power to, that is the most important thing to me. And I'm just so emotional because of it." That said, when you think about it, securing the original computer doesn't solve the actual issue. The tape could still be digitally backed up to the cloud, and has undoubtedly been downloaded and saved by numerous other individuals over the years. Even if this original version that Kanye got had some extra footage never seen by the public, we still have the 2007 version readily available. As a result, Kanye's gesture failed to bring the situation to a peaceful resolution, although it made a good plotline for reality television. Most recently, Kim Kardashian and Ray J have been engaged in multiple lawsuits against each other over the tape's distribution. In October of 2025, Kim and her mother Kris filed a defamation lawsuit against Ray J after comments he made in a documentary about Sean Diddy Combs. "If you told me that the Kardashians had been charged for racketeering, I might believe it." In response to their legal action, Ray J filed a counter-lawsuit, alleging that both Kardashian and Jenner had violated an agreement made in 2023 regarding the sex tape. Ray J affirms that the video was filmed and released consensually, and comments made by Kim and her mother disputing this reality were defamatory in nature. He also alleges that Vivid and Kim had conspired to file a bogus lawsuit after the tape's release, to further the scripted tabloid tale. Both cases remain ongoing to this very day, so I suppose we'll have to wait and see what the courts decide. But honestly, Ray J's story makes a lot of sense. It's undeniable that regardless of the video's origin, Kim saw massive success as a result of its release. This inspired other aspiring stars hoping to make a name for themselves, like Montana Fishburne. Throughout the 90s and early 2000s, it was nearly impossible to avoid the name Laurence Fishburne. After maintaining consistent work as an actor through the 80s, Laurence skyrocketed in fame thanks in part to his roles in Boys in the Hood and Deep Cover. Then finally he hit A-list status with his performance as Morpheus in the Matrix trilogy. By the early 2010s, Laurence had cemented himself as one of the premier actors in Hollywood and boasted an estimated net worth of $12 million. With wealth like this, his children undoubtedly would have opportunities to make a name for themselves as entertainers of their own, or at the very least go to college and get a stable job. Sadly, his oldest daughter Montana had plans of her own to make a name for herself, and at the age of 19 she inked a deal with the aforementioned Vivid to work as an adult star. In a press release announcing the signing, Montana stated, "I've watched how successful Kim Kardashian became, and I think a lot of it was due to the release of her sex tape by Vivid. I'm hoping the same magic will work for me. I'm impatient about getting well known and having more opportunities, and this seemed like a great way to get started on it." Montana truly believed that being featured in adult films would give her other opportunities in traditional entertainment, but she made a few baffling choices while doing so. For starters, with her father's influence, it's hard to imagine that she wouldn't be able to get her foot in the door through conventional means. What's more is her decision to go under the alias Chippy D in her roles. Typically, adult stars will use fake names to conceal their identity and protect their family from harassment. But it goes without saying that the only reason anyone would care about this adult career in the first place would be because her dad was in The Matrix. She could have even done a parody of those movies. Concealing that aspect of her identity almost entirely defeated the purpose of doing porn in the first place. Not to mention the fact that most people know that Montana Fishburne and Chippy D are the same person, meaning that the alias had accomplished nothing aside from confusing potential talent agents hoping to hire her. It was clear that, like other women who enter this line of work, Montana did not thoroughly think through her decision, and this lack of consideration manifested into real-life consequences almost immediately. She filmed her first tape with the male performer Brian Pumper. Montana was supposedly under the assumption that their first film was simply a practice run and would never actually see the light of day. However, Brian attempted to distribute the tape regardless, prompting Montana to file a lawsuit to prevent its release. Unfortunately for her, there was nothing she could do, and the tape began to make its rounds. Many began to wonder how her A-list celebrity father felt about the entire situation, and unsurprisingly, he was not thrilled. As she would say, "I heard he's mad at me, but I haven't spoken to him yet. I feel pretty confident that I can work things out with him. I think he wants to support me in everything I do, and though he sees this now as a negative, I believe in time he will view it as a positive." In spite of her optimism, her relationship with Laurence showed no signs of improving as time progressed. As it turns out, the last time she ever spoke to her dad on good terms was the morning of July 30th, 2010, wishing him a happy birthday. As in the afternoon, her adult video would be announced to the world. Now estranged from her family, things only got worse for Montana in the early months of her career. It was revealed that a year before becoming an adult star, Montana had been arrested on prostitution charges. In court, she pled no contest to charges of criminal trespassing, under the agreement to drop charges of solicitation and loitering in a public area for the purpose of prostitution. She was sentenced to 2 years of probation and was given community service as punishment. That said, Montana has denied ever working as an escort, claiming that the court documents leaked to the public were botched reports that were later corrected. Regardless of the legitimacy of her story, Montana would continue to get in trouble with law enforcement in the years that followed. Around the time of her tabloid spectacle, it was also discovered that Montana had been arrested after allegedly breaking into a woman's home and beating her relentlessly. The woman in question was supposedly Montana's boyfriend's ex-girlfriend, although what sparked the outburst is unknown. She was charged with battery, false imprisonment, assault with a deadly weapon, and trespassing. Suffice to say, her career was off to a rocky start, and in an act of desperation, Montana attempted to reconnect with her father. The thing is, Laurence was having none of it, reaffirming his embarrassment over the situation and saying, "I'm not going to speak with you until you turn your life around." But Montana's life only continued to spiral further and further, and she ended up in an inpatient facility that specialized in anger management, behavioral problems, and mental illness. In spite of his frustration, Laurence cared about his daughter, and feared for her well-being during this tumultuous time. As a result, he hired a private investigator to follow her around and make sure she was safe. During the investigation, the PI caught Montana on camera drinking cleaning supplies. Though it turns out that Montana was well aware of the investigator and was only pretending to drink the bleach to put on a show. This came to light during the proceedings of her assault and battery case, in which her lawyer showed the video to the court to prove that his client was not sound of mind. Initially, the film was set to help Montana get a plea deal and avoid jail time until they discovered it was a hoax. The next few years of Montana's life are relatively hazy. What is known is that she had fully stepped away from the adult industry by 2013, having fully learned that she made a mistake. I don't encourage people to go into the porn industry. You're not going to be famous, or be a movie star. You may end up having a really sucky life. Following her career in the industry, Montana has yet to taste the success of stardom she so desperately wanted. What's more, she has continued to find herself at the mercy of the legal system. In 2017, she was arrested after a car accident on I-95, in which she rear-ended a white Land Rover and fled the scene. With a blood alcohol level above 0.15, she was arrested and charged with 3 counts of DUI. She was arrested once again in 2022 after she allegedly slapped a police officer and was sentenced to 2 years of probation. Arguably, worst of all, Montana and her father's relationship remains strained. The two have since been photographed together, but it is up for speculation if they have fully rekindled their relationship. Montana's decision undeniably seems short-sighted, considering the immense wealth of opportunities in front of her. In other cases, though, it appears that a child of a star might fall back on adult content when their once famous parent falls on hard time. One of the most prolific college football quarterbacks of the 1980s was Bernie Kosar. In 1983, he threw for 3,642 passing yards as well as 25 touchdowns, leading the Miami Hurricanes to the national championship victory in 1984. He was highly sought after by NFL teams and was drafted by the Cleveland Browns in 1985, the same team he grew up watching as a young kid in Ohio. With the Browns, he served as the starting quarterback for 9 seasons, until he was released by the team in 1993. While his career was not worthy of Hall of Fame recognition, he is widely considered to be a hometown hero in the Cleveland area. But his rock-solid legacy would begin to show cracks in 2005, when his wife Babbitt Kosar filed for divorce. In the filings, Babbitt alleged that her husband had a severe addiction to drugs and was recklessly spending all of their savings. The divorce was finalized in 2007, and it's speculated that Bernie was left with very little money after the ordeal. This was particularly difficult on the couple's children, especially their eldest daughter, Sarah. "My oldest daughter went through a lot with the divorce. It was hardest on her. I screwed up with it. I always think about what I could have done differently." In 2011, Sarah was 19 years old, fresh out of high school, and working as a yoga instructor for children. Around this time, rumors began circling that Sarah was getting involved in less family-friendly activities. It was alleged that she had started a career as an adult performer under the name Lexi Silver, with her debut film portraying her as none other than a yoga instructor. Some speculate that her father's financial issues pushed her to take drastic measures to ensure her own personal financial security. The story began making the rounds on Cleveland football-related forums. However, the situation would not be acknowledged by Sarah or Bernie directly. That said, the tale doesn't end here. In 2013, Bernie began working as a preseason color commentator for the Cleveland Browns, and during a game against the St. Louis Rams, he had some harsh criticism. Rams wide receiver dropped 3 catchable balls in the first half, and Kosar was highly critical each time. At one point, he called the Rams receivers horrible. Play-by-play man Jim Donovan then playfully chided Kosar, saying the receivers' parents could be watching. Kosar replied by saying he'd be embarrassed if he was one of their parents. This diatribe was met with immense backlash, both by fans and even the Rams head coach, Jeff Fisher. I guess I'm a little disappointed. I'm just surprised that Bernie had such a lack of respect for players and this game. To be honest with you, I lost a lot of respect for him. It's highly unlikely he knew anything about our football team, but felt the need to make those comments. The Browns front office also came out to denounce his words. However, the most scathing criticism came from a journalist named Eric Goldstein, who wrote an article titled "Bernie Kosar, Father of Porn Actress, Feels Embarrassed for the Parents of the Rams Wide Receivers." So Bernie, you'd be embarrassed if your son dropped a pass while playing in the National Football League? That's incredibly ironic, considering your own daughter's line of work appears to be getting penises dropped into her. On film though, so it's classy and stuff. The article also directly links to Lexi Silver's personal website and displays a handful of shameful tweets from her Twitter account. "Want a guy to pummel my ass? Interested? So horny today. LOL. I love getting cum on in the morning. Who needs breakfast?" It appears that Lexi's career was short-lived, only featuring in 2 videos before disappearing entirely. It's worth noting that it has never been 100% confirmed if Lexi Silver was in fact Sarah Kosar. But considering their similar appearance and the fact that Lexi vanished shortly after people began to speculate on her identity, the rumor is not entirely unfounded. Bernie himself has never personally addressed the rumor either, ironically due in part to the embarrassing nature of the subject. It also seems he learned his lesson from the controversy and refrained from making similar comments in the future. These first 4 stories all share a common theme, as they come from a time where starring in not-safe-for-work content was far more taboo. However, with the recent rise in prominence of OnlyFans, young women now have more incentives than ever to jump into the industry. The allure of making millions on the site was so potent, in fact, that even children born into immense wealth couldn't help but take part, such as Michaela Spielberg. Steven Spielberg is unquestionably the most successful film director of all time. The man responsible for films like Jaws, Indiana Jones, and E.T. has found himself in the highest echelon of celebrity status, as Forbes has listed him as one of the most wealthy celebrities on the planet, with a net worth of over $5 billion. As busy as a man like Spielberg was, he still found time to build a family of his own. After divorcing his first wife, he married actress Kate Capshaw, who had an adopted son named Theo. Spielberg took the boy in as if he was his own, and even decided to adopt a second child in 1996 named Michaela. As difficult as it can be for some children in the adoption process, Michaela had seemingly hit the jackpot, all things considered. But I'm sure you can guess what she ultimately chose to do with her life, considering she's in today's video. In 2020, during an exclusive interview with The Sun, Michaela announced that she had recently begun filming her own pornographic videos and intended to become an erotic dancer. I got really tired of not being able to capitalize on my body, and frankly, I got really tired of being told to hate my body. And I also just got tired of working day to day in a way that wasn't satisfying my soul. If she was looking for a career path that was better for her soul, sex work was definitely the place to go. Michaela went on to emphasize the importance of creating her own income and not relying on her wealthy parents to get by, even though the only reason this scheme could work was based on her last name. While she did try to pass off her decision as calculated and harmless, there are a few red flags in this interview that paints a different story. First, she goes on to reveal her history of childhood trauma, in which she was taken advantage of by older men. She also discusses her battles with anorexia, alcoholism, and borderline personality disorder. These details recontextualize her decision, as she frequently emphasizes the necessity of bodily autonomy and sexuality. As a result, many have come to the conclusion that her decision to enter sex work was a method for her to cope. Most intriguing from this Sun interview is the claim that her parents were supportive of her decision. This would be challenged in an article posted by Page 6, which got an exclusive interview with a close family friend of the Spielbergs who stated, "Outwardly, Stephen and Kate, who are the most evolved parents in the world and love their kids beyond all measure, have always been supportive of Michaela and tried to understand her. Obviously, though, they're embarrassed by her sudden public admission of entry into the sex worker world. They're worried about how Michaela's revelation looks for their other kids, who are trying to be supportive but who are also embarrassed. This certainly isn't how they were raised." The young woman would directly respond to this allegation, claiming that her parents were not embarrassed at all, and were unsurprised about her decision due to her self-admitted neuroticism. Although it sounds like she's confusing them being unsurprised with them being supportive. In spite of her attempts to normalize the situation, things behind the scenes were anything but. Shortly after her announcement, Michaela found herself in headlines once again after being arrested for domestic violence. It began when she was out getting drinks at a bar with her 47-year-old boyfriend, Chuck Pankow. The couple returned home at 4 in the morning, and an intoxicated Michaela began hurling various objects at Chuck, one of which struck him. The police were called and Miss Spielberg was arrested after she changed her story numerous times, and was placed on a 12-hour hold in police custody. In a statement provided to Fox News, Chuck confirmed the incident had taken place, but chalked it up to a misunderstanding. The case was eventually dismissed a few months later. After this, it appears Michaela chose to step away from the limelight. In the current day, her only public social media profile is her Instagram, which by all accounts seems to be inactive. Her OnlyFans account has also been completely wiped, and she has remained out of the public eye over the last 5 years. While her endeavors proved to be extremely unsuccessful, others' experiences told a much different story, such as Sammy Sheen. Charlie Sheen is potentially one of the most iconic Hollywood figures of the 2000s, even if for all the wrong reasons. At one point, he was the highest paid actor on television, in the smash hit show 2.5 Men, where he raked in nearly $2 million per episode. Of course, his achievements on national television are dwarfed by his now infamous public meltdowns in 2011. In the midst of a bipolar manic episode, Sheen made a fool of himself during an ABC 2020 interview, in which he made a handful of bizarre comments, claiming that he was a warlock, possessed by the blood of a tiger, and claimed that he was, quote, winning.
Some are saying that you're bipolar.
I'm winning.
It needs to be understood that Charlie had an extremely chaotic life even prior to his mental breakdown, and had a well-documented history of messy relationship drama. In 2002, Sheen married his second wife, Denise Richards, with whom he had 2 children, daughters Sammy and Lola. The relationship came to a messy conclusion in 2006, when Denise filed a divorce. She claimed that Charlie's struggles with addiction had manifested into violent outbursts of anger and made their relationship untenable. On top of this, Denise also alleged that Charlie had an affinity for young women, as well as a particular interest in gay porn featuring very young men. Denise and Charlie have since reconciled and have been working together to co-parent their 2 daughters. But unfortunately, drama would reignite in 2022, shortly after Sammy's 18th birthday, when she announced that she'd be creating an OnlyFans. When asked about her parents' support in her endeavor, she stated that both were aware and that her mother was supportive. Indirectly, Sammy revealed that her father was not as pleased, and a few days later, he would publicly voice his displeasure. She is 18 years old now and living with her mother. This did not occur under my roof. I do not condone this, but since I'm unable to prevent it, I urged her to keep it classy, creative, and not sacrifice her integrity. Her mother Denise would fire back with her own statement. Sammy is 18 and this decision wasn't based on whose house she lives in. All I can do as a parent is guide her and trust her judgments, but she makes her own choices. She also went on to commend her daughter's bravery, acknowledging that she had done Playboy when she was younger, and was in no position to judge. Denise was so supportive, in fact, that only a few days later, she opened her very own OF account. Sammy continued her endeavors as a sex worker for the next few years, and by 2025, she had reportedly made over $3 million on OnlyFans. Charlie did eventually warm up to the idea of his daughter's career, specifically after he saw just how much money she was bringing in. I had a knee-jerk reaction to it because of the reputation that preceded it. I was just like, oh, this can only go bad. She's doing this, and it can only be a much more successful and pleasant experience with the support of myself, her mom, and others. I have to have confidence and just know in my heart that all of her virtues and all the wonderfulness that makes her her comes with her. Realistically, Charlie had no room to complain, as he had had so much sex in his lifetime that he eventually contracted HIV. In conclusion, these stories all vary in terms of context and long-term benefits. However, they are all viewed with the same judgment and criticism, regardless of their outcomes. Even individuals like Kim Kardashian and Paris Hilton may seem like success stories on the surface, but have been haunted by endless waves of humiliation and criticism to get where they are. Whatever lifestyle a person may desire, filming adult entertainment as an entry point has proven unanimously to be far less ideal than initially anticipated. It becomes even less captivating when you consider the countless examples of celebrity children carving out a name for their own without the use of porn. However, with this era of OnlyFans, the phenomenon will likely only grow more common. So now it's just a matter of waiting to see who will be next.